Hello and welcome to another program. I'm Pastor Frank Lewis, and I'm sharing with you today about how to have a better marriage. I know all of you want a better marriage, and it's really important to know how do you get a better marriage. So today I'm going to talk specifically about the number one problem that causes marriages to be so difficult, and really what causes all relationships to be so difficult, and that is unresolved emotional pain. I'm going to be sharing with you about what is unresolved emotional pain, and I'm going to be sharing with you how to resolve and heal unresolved emotional pain. This is going to be very, very important because it is the root cause of all the problems in relationships, but certainly the root cause for all the problems that we have in marriage, that you are and your spouse may be having in marriage. So I want to get into that. I'm going to show you how to resolve it. But before I do, I want to tell you about the book that I wrote for emotional healing. This is the key. The key is how to resolve emotional pain is actually in this book, but it's really going to have a great result for you when you get the key. You can get it on Amazon, and it will help you really to know what's happened, what happened to you, why life is so difficult, and what you can do about it. And I also have a website for the course that I'm working on right now. It's actually a book. This whole thing is going to become a book under the umbrella, if you will, of Relationships Revealed. I have a website called relationshipsrevealed.org, and you can go to that website and you can see the books that I'm writing, and you can also press a button for learn more about what I'm currently doing. And also, you can get help. You can actually press a button called Want Help. And I'll get back to you if you leave me your email. And if you leave me your phone number, it'll be a lot easier because then I could even call you. And that would be a lot easier for you and for me. The other thing is that each of these videos make up a chapter in the book. And so these videos you can see on YouTube, and it's under the name Pastor Frank Lewis. So you go to Pastor Frank Lewis, hit the playlist, and you're going to see these videos. And they're going to be a blessing to you. They're really going to help you a lot. And they're all about marriage problems, solutions, and we're going to be dealing today with the key solution, the key understanding of unresolved emotional pain. So what is unresolved emotional pain? I'm going to actually read to you from an excerpt that I did for Relationships Revealed way back in 2011 and 12. But it's still very applicable today, so you may want to get your notes out and take notes for this because it's going to be very, very helpful to you. So what is unresolved emotional pain like? Well, it's pain that you live with that has been felt. In other words, it was felt. When was it felt? It was felt as a child, as a young child, as an infant, toddler, small child. It was felt. Where did it come from? It came from mom and dad, mom or dad, or both. It came. What kind of pain is it? It's emotional pain. It could be physical pain. You may have been beaten. You may have been hit. There may be many things that you went through that cause pain. But just as painful, if not more, is neglect. If you were neglected, if you were with a parent that was unemotionally unavailable, I do groups where I help people resolve emotional pain. And what happened is last night I had a group, and this person had two alcoholic parents, and he felt totally neglected. He never could speak. He didn't have a voice. Well, that may be your situation. But what has happened is when you were a child, an infant, it could be even a baby, infant, toddler, and small child, you receive pain. And it can be pain from any kind of abuse. The interesting thing is that brain scientists tell us that anytime our brain is overloaded with stress, with fear, that can even happen to a child when it wanders away from its mother in the grocery store. Well, that produces trauma and produces felt feelings. Now, if that young child who's lost in the grocery store just walked away from mom and can't find her all of a sudden and has these feelings, if those feelings are not shared with mom but are just simply internalized, that's when you have pain that has been felt but not expressed. So it is the way to look at this that I really thought was very good was it's like a bruise. You know you get bruised, it hurts like heck because it's under the skin, but you can't see it except you see and you know the dry blood, you know that it's gone around the muscle to protect it, but it hurts, And so if somebody bumps into you, that is hurtful. Why? Because you have a bruise. It's under the skin. You can't, if you touch it, you know it's there. But you may not be able to see it except for the blood that's come to the surface. But that is a bruise. And it's under the skin, but you feel it when somebody touches it. If you touch it, or if somebody else touches it, you know that you have been touched because the pain is very, very strong. A bruise is physical and it'll go away. But the bruise that comes from a child feeling pain but not being able to express it will not go away. It stays trapped in the body, and it actually is a situation that occurs when you have not expressed it. It's energy that stays in the body and is unresolved. We call it unresolved emotional pain. The bruise will go away. The blood will dissipate. But the bruise that occurs or the pain that occurs for a child will not go away. So what happens? Well, when somebody comes along and bumps us when we have a bruise, it's very, very painful. Well, the same thing occurs for a child that has unresolved emotional pain that grows up to be adult that has unresolved emotional pain. Somebody says something, and brain scientists tell us that when we experience something in the present that's remotely similar to the past, what ends up happening is we end up having that pain come into our consciousness that was unresolved, and it'll cause us emotional upset. Behavioral scientists and psychologists call that an emotional trigger. That occurs because the pain was unresolved. It didn't get expressed. It got felt, but not expressed. And so what happens is that we have emotional triggers. You may have emotional triggers. If you're married, you may have your spouse, like what happened to me. My wife said certain things, and I just went from 0 to 10 in anger. One of three things is going to happen. You can be angry, or you can run away, or you can freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. And that is absolutely what will happen. So what we've got is a unresolved emotional pain. And so it is sitting there. Now, if you have enough unresolved emotional pain, what ends up happening is you end up in a situation where too much unresolved emotional pain over a period of time will absolutely cause sickness and disease. It'll cause anxiety. It'll cause fear. It'll cause all negative emotions because you're sitting with trapped emotional pain. And what is going to happen is as you get older and as you experience more pain, it's going to be like trying to keep a beach ball that you're sitting on in a pool from turning over, from not causing you to fall over. Well, if you sit on the side and hold the pool, the side of the edge of the pool, what'll happen is you may be able to stay on the beach ball, an inflated beach ball, in water a little bit, but if you take your hand off immediately, you're going to flip over. That's what happens with unresolved emotional pain. It's there, it's happened, but it is not been dealt with. And because it's not been dealt with, it is going to continue to be trapped in our body. And what's going to happen is it's going to cause, like I said, sickness and disease. It'll cause major problems in marriage and in any relationship is when that emotional pain is bumped into or experienced something remotely similar in the present, it will cause that pain to come into your brain in nanoseconds. That's a billionth of a second. That's very, very fast, and you won't be able to do anything about it because you won't even know it's there. And that's what emotional pain does. It causes emotional problems. It causes relationship ruptures in marriage and with other relationships. Unresolved emotional pain is the problem, and we need to deal with it. So if you get really angry, or you run, or you try to make peace with the situation, that's because of the unresolved emotional pain. So now what we want to do is we want to look at how, once we realize it's felt pain that's not been expressed. So how do you think that it would be healed? Well, if you thought it needs to be expressed, you're absolutely right. Because unresolved emotional pain, as I said, must be expressed in order to be resolved. Why? Because we are created in the image of God. And because we're created in the image of God, we have to do what God does. What does God do? He speaks. He says things and they become. So if we're going to resolve this trapped emotional pain, we're going to have to talk about it. We're going to have to get it out of our mouth, and we're going to have to speak to someone about it. It won't just do to get it out of our mouth by ourselves. No, it has to be accepted, and a person has to be accepted and heard, listened to. First of all, they have to be listened to. So you're speaking out what the pain was. How do you know what the pain is? Well, when you trigger or you have an emotional upset, you want to talk about it, and it will lead you into the trapped emotional pain if you ask Holy Spirit to help you. Now, it's got to be, to resolve it, it must be heard by another person. That could be your husband, that could be a friend, that could be a group, but it's got to be heard by another person. That means that it must be the person that hears you has to be listening to you. So really what everybody is looking for, the whole human race is looking for, is to be listened to, loved, and heard. Listened to, heard, and loved. Listened to, heard, and loved. We all agree to that, okay? So what we're wanting to see happen here is we've got to be able to speak about it. So somebody has to listen to us. And when that somebody listens to us, they have to prove to us that they've heard us. If they are just not listening to us or they're thinking of something else, we know that they haven't heard us. So it doesn't matter. There's no resolution to the pain. What we need is for them to reflect back what they said to us, and we need to reflect back like a mirror. When you look in a mirror, you don't see anything other than what's there. And so when we reflect back, we mirror, we reflect back to them what they just said. We don't add anything, we don't subtract anything. When you look in a mirror, it doesn't talk back to you. Well, in Disney it did, but you don't normally, it just reflects back to you who you are, what you look like. And so that's exactly what we do. We reflect back to the person what they just said in our own words. We don't reflect back to them or tell them what they just said in every word they said. We want the essence. We want them to know that they're heard. That's the key to this whole thing. Because it is when a person knows they're heard, they're reflected back to every group that I have, and I do 5 groups a week right now, because the need is great for people to get unresolved emotional pain resolved, because they're realizing their lives are not working well, their marriages aren't working well, your marriage may not be working well, so the unresolved emotional pain must be resolved before you're going to have a marriage that works well. And so what happens is every one of these people in the group tell the group that they were very much heard. They felt heard. They felt listened to. They felt loved, okay? Why? Because somebody was listening to them. And so that reflection is critical. Now, here's what happens when you are reflected back to and you know you're heard. There's an emotional connection made. Now, emotional connection is what every single human being wants. They want an emotional connection. And the way you get an emotional connection is you know that you've been heard. Now, a little bit of trust is built. And the other thing that happens is that the heart, even the most wounded heart, Holy Spirit showed me, will open up just a little bit. And then we put in unconditional love. Why do we put in unconditional love? Because unconditional love, it says in the Bible, will heal the broken heart, will cover a multitude of sins. Love is the answer. It's what we're all looking for. We want to be loved, accepted, and approved. And so we do that. How do we do that? We do that not by saying, I know what you went through. No, nobody knows what you went through. What we do is we say, I'm so sorry you went through that. And we say it empathetically. Or, I'm so glad and excited about the result you're having. So we're with them. Now, the brain scientists tell us that when we have someone that's glad to be with us in what we're going through, which is talking about the pain of our childhood, what's going to happen is that we are going to actually not only feel accepted and loved, but we're actually going to have joy. Because brain scientists tell us when someone's glad to be with us and whatever we're going through that's painful, there's produced joy. They further tell us that our brains are designed to run on joy. Well, isn't that proof of the Bible? The Bible says the joy of the Lord is your strength. And God talks about, the scriptures talk about joy all the time. It talks about joy, that your joy may be made full. So joy is a result of having someone that's glad to be with you in what you're going through. Well, that's wonderful, because what we want is that's why we need somebody to go through this with us, because we need to be listened to, we need to be mirrored, and we need to be validated. That's what your spouse can do for you. That's what a friend can do for you. And if you might be able to find a group you can't have judgment. You can't be judged because then you won't share your pain. You can't be fixed. You don't want somebody to tell you what they think you should do. You want a friend or a spouse. If you can find a willing spouse, this is going to work very, very well because you're going to develop an emotional connection. And next week, I'm going to talk to you about the power. What happens with emotional connections from the experts? You're going to hear what the experts tell us about the value of emotional connection, the value of emotional intimacy. That's what every marriage needs is emotional intimacy. You can't get it without doing the work to resolve the emotional pain because you will not become open, vulnerable, and transparent if you have belief that is inaccurate because of the pain that you had as a child. Do you remember way back when I talked to you about false beliefs? False beliefs cause people to hide behind a facade and a mask. And what happens is when you're hiding behind a facade and a mask, you're not going to tell your wife or your husband what your pain is. You're not going to be open and vulnerable. You're not going to be known, let yourself be known. And if you're not going to let yourself be known, what's going to happen is you're going to have a less than fulfilling marriage. You're going to have a less than satisfying marriage. So this is the first step in having a great marriage. I'm going to talk to you in weeks ahead about some of the things that happen when you are able to have unresolved emotional pain resolved. There's some specific things that happen. Not only will you have emotional intimacy and emotional connection, but you're going to have some other things that are phenomenal that make a great marriage, and I'm going to be talking to you about that. But suffice it to say that you and everybody that's listening, everybody that wants to have a great marriage or even great relationships must resolve emotional pain. But I'm going to tell you, there's something also that we do, and that is we affirm each other. You know, the Bible says in Ephesians, building each other up in love, supplying what each person needs. Well, we all need to be affirmed. We all need to be loved, accepted, and approved. Not for what we do, but for who we are. And so, following Ephesians, whenever we have the groups that I do, we always affirm each other. And that's the most wonderful time. Why? Because we've been listened to, we've been heard, and people in the group have been validated and loved, accepted, and approved. Not for anything that they've done, but for who they are. Well, who are they? They're people that have just expressed their pain, and so they're accepted. That's what we all wanted as children, but we didn't get. That's what parents were supposed to do. That's why I call it reparenting. God gave me the name reparenting. Reparenting is what happens when you and your spouse, a willing spouse, husband or wife, both together, do this work. It's called reparenting. If you can find a friend to do it with or a group to do it with, it's called reparenting. It's giving each other what we didn't get. So now affirmation is so wonderful because now I'm being affirmed and I'm being loved and told how valuable, important, and worthy I am. Now, I was listened to. See, if your spouse is listening to you and hearing you because they're reflecting back and then validating you, that's good. But when your spouse affirms you and is so grateful and tells you how grateful they are that you are their spouse, that you're your husband and or wife, that causes great integration of issues, of pain. It causes really trust to build, and it really is going to cause you to have a better and better marriage. So affirmation is what we do after we do the listening, the mirroring, and the validating. We do affirmation. Builds trust. And we got to have trust of our spouse in order to be able to have a feeling of safety. We've got to trust our spouse to have a feeling of safety so that we can express ourselves and be vulnerable, transparent, open, honest about the pain that we experience, the situations we experience that cause the pain in our childhood. So I'm sharing with you the root cause for all relationship problems, but certainly for marriage issues. The root cause is unresolved emotional pain. I've told you what it is. It's like a bruise. I've told you that in order to be able to resolve emotional pain, you absolutely must be able to be listened to. You share the emotional pain. You must be heard and know you're heard because you've been reflected back to, and you must be validated. And the exciting thing is when you're affirmed. So you can have a marriage made in heaven right here on earth if you'll do this work. If you'll do what I'm telling you, I promise you, you'll hear about the rewards for having less pain, the rewards for resolving emotional pain next week. But this is so exciting. You're going to want to participate in this and hopefully be able to talk your spouse into being able to do this work, because you want a marriage made in heaven right here on earth. And this is the way you're going to do it. You're going to resolve emotional pain, and you're going to feel freedom. And freedom to be what? Freedom for what? To be yourself. You're going to start liking yourself, and the Great Commandment says we got to love God with our heart, mind, and soul, and love our neighbor as ourselves. You got to love yourself before you can love your spouse. But when you do, it's a marriage made in heaven, and you're going to be blessed and excited about that kind of a marriage.